good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending on the country you're watching us from. I'm your host, Nalin Channa, and I bring you another session of Ask Me Anything on Prime Time AMA from TLR Now. TLR Now is a niche training consulting and mentoring organization. We've got presence across the Indian subcontinent and in the Middle East, and we're expanding further. I am the CEO of National Gas Company. I'm based out of Oman in the Middle East, and I also sit as the director on the TLR Now. And we've got a very distinguished guest today, Ms. Sonya Mehta. She is the school director with Pathways World School, and she is bringing us a lot of insights on how to build resilience in children. A very warm welcome, Ms. Mehta. Thank you so much for coming here on our show today.
Good evening, Nalin. Thank you so much for having me on the show. And I look forward to learning a lot even from you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And ma'am, as we start, I would just want you to give a brief introduction about yourself. I mean, I'll probably start with Ms. Mehta is a graduate in psychology and education from University of San Diego. And she's an alumni from Lawrence School, Sanawar. She has got 3 decades of experience in the education industry, in the education field, and she's a passionate educationist. But ma'am, I would request you to, in your own words, if you can let our audience know about yourself.
As long as I can think back, even as a child, I always wanted to be a teacher. And circumstances happened that I was exposed to the whole field of special education at a very early age. And that is something then I decided that is what I wanted to do. I wanted to help children with disabilities.
Right.
First, as I thought I'd be a physiotherapist, but that didn't work out. And then I decided to teach children with disabilities.
Right.
And even though my parents were not very keen that I become a teacher, a special educator, that was where my heart really pulled me, and then I did my bachelor's and master's in education and started teaching children at the age of 21. 21 was when I started my teaching career.
Wonderful. Right.
And then when my first school that I joined was a special school. And the thing that really struck me initially was I was teaching the class or the oldest children in the class. And I had most of the children who were older than me chronologically. So I was a 21-year-old and I had 23 and 24-year-old students in my class. And that really hit me hard because it occurred to me that, how much longer can they really stay in a school? They need to do something more than just be in a school.
True.
And then I got them, I started looking at more, career options that they could look at, started giving them kind of on-the-job exposure so they started learning the skills that they needed for a job. Then, of course, I went abroad to do my master's degree. And when I came back, I started a vocational training center for young adults with disabilities in Jamshedpur, where I was based.
Okay.
And ran that for 2 years. Then I was asked to also take over the special school that I had first started my career in. So for 3 or 4 years, I double-hatted and looked after both the vocational training center as well as the special needs school.
Right.
And then I went to Delhi and joined the Sri Ram school, and again joined their special education department. And again over there, started working more towards educating the children who were above 14, 15 years old on how to prepare themselves for the workplace.
Okay.
My colleague and myself, we developed a teacher assistant training program, which we then ran for quite successfully for a couple of years. We had children coming out and then joining various schools to be teacher assistants in the pre-primary classes.
Right.
Um, and then my journey took me to Bangalore, where I joined the Indus International School as the head of the special needs department. And then from there, I moved more into general education as I became the curriculum coordinator of the Indus School in Bangalore. And then from there, became the director of curriculum for all the three Indus International schools across Bangalore, Hyderabad, and Pune.
Right.
And then my journey took me to the northeast of our country, and I joined the Assam Valley School in 2013 as the deputy head. And within 3 months, actually, I became the head of the school and stayed there for 6 years before I left there and joined Pathways. And in fact, just today is my first work anniversary after joining Pathways.
Congratulations, ma'am. Congratulations. So we've got one more reason to celebrate today.
Yes.
Quite an interesting journey, ma'am. Quite an interesting journey. And I'm sure you're proud of this journey. I'm sure it would have been very eventful, full of learnings. And
yes.
Yeah, full of spreading knowledge across. And you've traveled across the country. And I'm sure people have learned a lot from you. And you've added a lot of value.
I've learned a lot from people. It's always been you learn, people learn from you, and you learn from people. It's always a two-way street.
Yeah, you're right, ma'am. Absolutely, very true, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. So we'll trigger off this conversation. I've got a few questions that we'll put up, and then we've got our live audience as well. So people will just keep on asking the questions. So we'll take them up as and when they come up. Ma'am, these are unprecedented times. I mean, nobody had imagined something like Corona. If somebody would have spoken 6 months before, if somebody had told anybody that half of the world would be sitting at home, I mean, people would have laughed at you if you would have said that. But definitely that has happened, and that is the reality now. So in these unprecedented times, what has been or continues to be the biggest challenge for you as a person and for the education institutions in general and Pathways in particular?
I'll talk about educational institutions first. Educational institutions for centuries have been more brick and mortar schools.
Yeah.
And while we do include a lot of technology in the class, it's always just inside the class, and it's not. We've had days where we've had to close school down for pollution, because we've had bad AQIs in the city. And at that time, we have also, spoken about using technology to do online classes. In the year that I've been in PWS, I've been talking to the teachers that we must use, encourage the more use of technology in the class, and even reach out to students at home through technology. And while this was all being spoken about, then comes COVID-19, and whether we like it or not, we have just been thrown into the deep end of using technology. And it was really remarkable that our teachers, who were so used to teaching face-to-face, within 3 days had sort of turned around and, were holding classes online. Initially, because it wasn't, the nation hadn't locked down. We had started with the teachers coming to school, and they were holding the classes with the computer in front of them because they wanted to use the whiteboard. But then soon after that, they were at home and they were doing everything on their own. And it's been a huge learning experience for all the teachers. And then during the summer holidays, there have been so many webinars and ways of learning how to improve your quality of teaching online. And teachers, even during the holidays, work very hard to build their skills for online teaching. They continue to reach out to students to keep in touch with them, to help them where if they needed any extra help for their academics.
Right.
And parents who were not really involved in the day-to-day running of um, their academics for their child, then was knee deep into seeing how classes were being held for their child. They were the ones who had to really spearhead a lot at home. And it
Right.
could not have been easy for parents because they were trying to juggle both their own work and ensuring that their children were attending classes on time.
Especially the younger children, I think, because parents
Yes,
would have to probably sit in along with the students.
yes, especially for the pre-primary because they cannot sit at the screen
Yeah.
on their own. So it was more us, working with the parents, and then the parents doing the same things with the with their own children.
True. 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 Yeah. Yeah, I think so. We had a
It's
question which probably is answered. Can you tell us what kind of challenges has COVID brought to the schooling industry? So yeah, that's what we've been talking
yeah,
about.
yeah. But I think I believe in my heart that we're never given more challenges than we can actually face.
Yeah, you're right.
And
Right.
I think our teachers have done admirably for whatever they have come up with. And we're starting school now in the next week. Monday we start online school again,
Yeah.
and the past week and a half we've had been having a lot of professional development for our teachers. And just in that, we've been, of course, discussing a lot on tech tools and how we can make our classes more interactive and more interesting for our students. And it's again remarkable to see how much teachers have learned through the holidays, and how much work, how much time they have spent in improving their own skills to
True.
make
True.
their classes more interactive.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it has been definitely challenging for the teachers as well. But as they say, any challenge, if it doesn't kill you, it will only make you better.
Yes,
So that's good. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. And another question that we have is, how do you think COVID has worked for the betterment of schools? So, ma'am, I think this is a temporary phenomenon. We hope that once things resume, we'll get back to the normal curriculum or the normal way of studying that we had. But would there be takeaways from COVID that will kind of carry on throughout our education approach in the future? Has in any way this
Yes,
contributed to the betterment?
absolutely. For example, as I spoke about, the days when we have bad pollution in the NCR and we have to close school down. Now we don't
Right.
have to close school down. We will just convert to the online mode, so we
Right.
don't have a break in academics.
Correct.
Another way that it will help us is my vision for Pathways World School is that in it might not happen overnight, but in the long run, I want the school to be known as a tuition-free school, and
Sure.
our teachers will be taking extra classes for our for children who are struggling in certain subjects or are underperforming, and
Right.
they'll be able to do this online, and they don't have to stay back in school extra. Children don't have to be made to stay back in school extra. It
True.
can be done online.
Online. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I think there are positives as well. It has taught us a lot in this. The pandemic has really taught us a lot.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. So I think Anshu got your answer. Abhay, Mr. Nalin, thank you for another session. There's another lady, Malika, ma'am. She's asking what kind of what method of assessment are you able to conduct? So I think that's another very valid question, that assessments would become a challenge, because fine, online learning is happening, but what kind of assessments you do so that people or the students are ranked properly?
Well, in today's world, we still have to do a certain amount of paper pencil tests. While we do a lot of formative assessments while we're teaching every unit, and that does not have to be paper pencil. give children a lot of opportunities to come up with projects, or it could be a debate. There are lots. There we have a huge variety of formative assessments that we do. But when it comes to summative, then you have to get back to paper pencil.
Right.
And
Right.
Fortunately, as a whole school group, we have already, we in our learning management system already has a facility for students to be doing examinations online, because as you know, the MYP has e-assessments. So
Okay.
children in the middle years program, we've always been getting them used to finally doing online assessments in grade 10.
Right.
But for our diploma program, which again goes back to paper pencil, there are a number of tools that can be used. There's a website called exam.net, which helps in proctoring of examinations.
Okay.
And when school opens, we will be having examinations for our grade 11 before they move officially into grade 12. So
Right.
we're going to be using exam.net to get them to do their exams. Again, it will be an on-screen exam, but it will help monitor that children are being academically honest, that they're not moving around, they're not opening any more windows to help them get information that they're not supposed to be using.
Right. Right. Do you also see some kind of a migration to more of personality assessments rather than specific questions? It would be what I mean to say is, if it is a personality assessment test, then people can't really. There are no chances of like students copying or anybody helping them.
More like
More
open-ended kind of
kind of,
questions,
yeah.
so but that actually is the beauty of the IB, because we don't have most of the question answers that are expected are not knowledge driven. You
Right.
use the knowledge that you have learned, but then you have to apply it. And so no two answers can be the same or
Right.
have to be the same. Very much, unfortunately, our the national curriculums unfortunately have
Yeah.
more knowledge-based answers than the
Correct.
international curriculum. So that's one of the big plus points of the IB as
That's
well.
true. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, ma'am. The next question we have from Ankur Virmani. He is asking, ma'am, what are the key three things you will advise an academician who wants to open a school in a small town? Wonderful question. I think it's people moving away from big cities in the COVID scenario and thinking of opening a school back in their hometown. So wonderful.
I would definitely, my advice would be that we look at different instructional strategies. We must move away from rote learning and bookish knowledge to using what they're learning into real life, so they learn to apply it, because what you can apply, you always remember better.
Correct.
As a student, I never really did very well in written exams, because everything was just knowledge based, and I did not have the capacity just to mug up everything.
True.
But when it comes to application, children can do it so much better, because they've played around with the information, they've learned it. So I think in today's world, we really need to work on ensuring that what we teach our children is very application based, real life situations involved in problem solving, which will always lend to
Yeah.
much better learning.
Absolutely.
Another thing for somebody wanting to open a new school is to have teachers who are willing to learn, to innovate in their teaching, not to while experience is always needed in a school, you need experienced teachers, but even experienced teachers can unlearn and relearn new methodologies. So we need to have people who are willing to innovate in the field of education. That's, I think, really the need of the hour for our country.
Absolutely. I think the quality of teachers is something which can never be compromised upon. I mean, that is something which is, because that's the basic thing, and that's what the teachers are going to give to the children. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome. I hope, Ankur, you've got your answer. We've got another person from the audience, Janya Rajpal. She's asking, what is your approach for students who are struggling to adjust to online schooling?
Well, we do. We have our teachers reach out to students, talk to them over phone. Um, the kind of students who, at least I have found, who are struggling with online learning are children with special needs, and therefore, sometimes we, the teachers, talk to the parents and advise them how they can help children if they are very small. Otherwise, having one-on-one sessions with them at least 3 or 4 times in a week, where we can work with them directly and get them to understand. With this, the young generation, they are digital natives. So for them, online learning or doing things on screen is so much easier than for us, who are digital immigrants.
True.
But yes, of course, for some children, who are the extrovert in nature, they like to interact with others than just sitting in front of a screen and not having that kind of physical interaction. Sometimes, yes, definitely is difficult. And that can be somehow alleviated by having more interaction sessions, more discussions. We use Zoom quite widely for our online classes, so using breakout rooms and getting them to collaborate with each other. That will somehow bring a little more interaction into class.
Yeah, I think more of activity-based interactions would be helpful.
Yes.
Rather than one way, because when you're sitting physically in a class, then the teacher can probably more easily monitor the students. But and sometimes people are online, and some naughty children might just switch off their video and say something wrong with my network.
Oh yes, we have a lot of that. We have a lot of that.
Yeah, so I think that.
So when you are faced with a problem, you look for a solution. So we've had all these problems in what I keep referring to as on virtual classes 1.0, and we're hoping that we'll be able to resolve these in virtual classes 2.0.
Right. Yeah, wonderful. I think Janya has got her answer. The next question we have from Shailesh Gupta. He says, don't you think Indian syllabus, the way of teaching and assessment needs a drastic change? We didn't change much in line of the international standard.
Where it comes to the Indian curriculum, yes, I definitely think that teaching and assessment really needs to be revamped and overhauled. And I think to a certain extent, so has the MHRD also realized this.
Right.
And I hope that they will do something soon. But when I was in Assam Valley School up in the Northeast, that was not an international school. We followed the ICSE and the ISE curriculum. But we worked very hard with the teachers to change the way that they delivered the curriculum. So it became more hands-on, application-based, moving away completely from rote learning. So while there are strategies that can be used, but I do think that the national curriculum needs to relook at the amount that they are expecting the children to learn, because with that, the national curriculum is a mile wide, but an inch deep. And that needs to change. We need to have more in-depth study of fewer concepts so that the learning is more authentic.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think that's very important point you raised, man. Because today, I mean, even small children know very well how to use Google. So we
Absolutely.
know where things are. So rather than just mugging up everything, it should be more of concepts and principle-based learning, which has to be emphasized. And I think, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
You know, we teachers no longer are the knowledge givers or the knowledge sharers. Knowledge is very easily available. So if a school cannot become different from Google, then they're going to lose out. And
absolutely.
how can a teacher be different from Google? Because we teach children life skills. We teach them things that they are not going to learn from Google. And that is what we have to work towards as a teaching community in our country.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wonderful, ma'am. So I think Shailesh has his answer. We've got the next question from Abhay Channa. He says, ma'am, what would you advise to parents in this new scenario of virtual school? I'm a father of an 11-year-old class 6 student. I've been able to understand his strengths and weaknesses, but how can I be the assistant to the teachers who are conducting online classes? Wonderful question, Abhay. Yeah, ma'am. What's your take on that?
I don't think that Mr. Chandna needs to really be the assistant to the teacher, because if the relationship is between the teacher and the student, and if we as parents step in to sort of try and help the child, the more a parent helps the child, the more the child will become dependent on the parent to help them out. So encourage your child to, if they don't understand something, to reach out to the teacher, to ask the teacher for further explanations. Um, what we've been discussing in the school, and we want to implement now when school reopens, is have certain discussion forums class wise. So if say a child has a problem in something, they put their question on the discussion forum,
Right.
and then we encourage other students to help the child answer that question, because very often children learn much better from each other. And it's only if the children are not able to help answer that question or help clarify that doubt, then the teacher will step in and clarify or teach that part of that concept again.
Right. 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 Okay.
So the just because we are online, we're doing virtual classes, children are at home, uh, parents must not feel the urge to jump in and try and play the role of the teacher, because in a way that also takes away the effectiveness of the teacher in the class.
Right. Okay. We'll move on to another question from Nazneen. She says, how do you think the presence of a parent or guardian with the student impacts the delivery of a teacher who's still struggling with the new online methodology?
It definitely affects the teacher. I mean, I know that when during the lockdown, when online classes first happened, we kept hearing stories of parents sitting next to the child to see how the teacher was teaching, and then they were taking recordings of how the teacher was teaching. And I think that was a little unfair, because this was
Yeah.
a completely new environment for the teacher. They were learning themselves,
Correct.
and then to pass judgment on how they were teaching, and um, why were they doing this and why weren't they doing that, was a little unfair. Um, Parents should, though, I think as schools, we would want parents to just ensure that the children are attending classes, and they're not just absenting themselves from the school day, but then let that relationship between the child and the teacher build on its own without parental interference.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the beginning is always messy, but
Yes.
gradually we get better as we move along.
Yeah, but of course because children are at home, there has to be a lot more communication between the parent and teacher. So if a child is missing from class, it is very important that the teacher at least reaches out to the parent saying, your child missed my class, is everything okay?
Right.
um, are they unwell, or if they had is there some problem? Because it's only then that where the child will know that the parent and the teacher are partners.
Correct.
And they cannot try and pull wool over anybody's eyes.
Yeah, true. Wonderful. We move on to the next question. Punya is asking, there probably were a few troubles regarding online classes in the beginning. So I was wondering if there would be any new developments in the system to make everything easier. Maybe she's referring to the IT challenges, which probably would have evolved over a period of time.
Well, I would say that, because we started online classes and then we went in for that full lockdown. So when there were IT issues, there were children, whose cameras stopped working, or they were having issues, and there was nobody to fix it because nobody was allowed to move except for essential services. Whereas now things are not that difficult to get fixed, or so if there is a problem, it'll be easier to get that problem resolved. So I don't think that there should be too many IT problems. Yes, again, I will say that because we were using online platforms for the first time, there were issues.
Right.
But then soon we sort of taught the teachers the kind of security measures that they need to have in place to ensure that you don't have somebody who is uninvited come into your class. And so with having increased security measures that now all our teachers follow,
right,
the issues of the online platform have greatly reduced. Even towards the end of just before the summer holidays, we found that there were actually no problems then in how nobody was Zoom bombing, as they would say, any of the classes, and there were no issues there. And now teachers have got a handle on better tech tools that they will use in the class to make things more interactive and more interesting.
Right. Okay, Ankur has got another question, ma'am. He is asking, with so much of distractions and temptations available to the youngsters, how to inculcate a habit of staying focused in children in the post-COVID era?
I think the distractions and temptations were even there pre-COVID. It's not that it's suddenly come. It's just that now children are spending so much more time on the screen, and before COVID, we were saying, don't have too much screen time, stay away from the screen. And now the children are virtually spending their entire day on the screen. So that does definitely add to more temptation. But I would recommend to parents that they must definitely have certain essential agreements in the whole family, where there are certain times of the day where there is no screen time for everyone. Let it be family time. Bring out board games, talk to each other. I think that we really need now to start limiting screen time that is passive. Where I attended a very interesting webinar on good versus bad screen time. And the panelists over there said that as long as a child is not passively watching a screen, like watching just television or playing these video games, you can't say that screen time is bad. But if there is another person at the other end of the screen and you're interacting, it's not bad screen time. So there's we need to now at least while online classes are happening, we need to limit how much time children spend on just watching either TV or YouTube. Encourage them to read physical books. Encourage them to be physically active, because that is again something that being locked up at home is also an issue. And now children who don't like to be physically active have a absolutely ready-made excuse of why they shouldn't be exercising.
Correct. And they're with their iPads and laptops, and even the class is over. So, yeah, true. Ma'am, Shailesh has another question. He says, what's your view on introduction of coding and programming at very early stage than what we have which is almost nothing. I think he's again referring to the Indian curriculum where nothing much is there, but how the IB
I
offers.
think that it's now very important for us to be looking at introducing coding, and in fact, Pathways is doing that. I know Pathways School Noida starts coding at the primary level, and we are planning to introduce this in our curriculum in this coming academic session as well, because these are the new age tools that we need to equip our children with.
Right, right, absolutely. Ma'am Nazneen has a comment. She says, very well said on the national curriculum. I've taught students both under Maharashtra Board Indian and Pearson's EdXL board simultaneously in the same setup. And the way these two batches grew, where those from international board outgrew our Indian system education in terms of analysis, understanding nuances of the concept from 10 to 25. Yeah. I mean, it reiterates the point that the approach has to change, and MHRD must definitely come out with a revamped structure very soon. Then, ma'am, we've got one of your big fan, Akshay Sundaram. He says, Mrs. Sonia, I can close my eyes. Whatever the topic, this teacher is a God-given gift. So proud of you, ma'am. So,
Akshay was one of my students in this international school. I'm sure when he was my student, he would have wanted to kill me because I was always after his life. But
yeah, that's what happens, ma'am. Today, I mean,
yes,
we miss our teachers so much, and those very teachers we used to like detest them when they used to ask whether the homework is done or not, whether you're ready for the exam or not. So,
yeah.
yeah, you're absolutely, ma'am, absolutely, ma'am. Another thing with respect to COVID, coming back to the subject now, everybody has been impacted. Industries have been impacted, businesses have been impacted, schools have been impacted. Were there any instances where you had to bring down your costs and you had to lay off any of your staff, teachers, or you had to reduce salaries for any, because these are difficult questions where people are struggling with at the moment?
Pathways, I'm talking of the whole group, and I'm not only talking about my school. Pathways as a group believes they're a very people-oriented group. We've always believed that we are a large family, the parents, the teachers, the students. I think we are one of the few schools that even have like a staff alumni. So we have staff who have left us, are invited back to meet up and to have dinner and interact with us. So we have not reduced any salaries. We have not laid off any staff. Um, the only thing that we have done is we have become a little more careful of rehiring. So where in normal times we would have definitely replaced a teacher who was leaving with another teacher, now we actually see whether that replacement is necessary, and if it's not necessary and we can rework within our own the manpower that we have just been very careful in our rehiring.
Yeah, that's awesome, because I think that is a challenge that everybody is facing. So very good to hear that, ma'am. Yeah. Ma'am, I think our topic today is building resilience in children. So we just got carried away with the questions that keep on coming. But yeah, what would be few tips that you would want to give, whether to students or even to parents, that how to build resilience in children, especially in these unprecedented times?
Especially in these times,
Yeah.
the whole attitude of resilience is so important because it helps us deal with stress, it helps us deal with failures, it helps us deal with difficult and tough times.
Right.
And when we were growing up, people thought that you were born with talent, you were born with natural abilities, your and it was God's gift to you. And now that has really been termed as a fixed mindset.
True.
And the opposite of a fixed mindset is a growth mindset, where you believe that qualities human qualities are adaptable and they can grow and develop with time. And I think that is the attitude that we want to have. And I just want to spend a little bit of time in just, just so that people understand the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset, because this, according to me, is one of the most important things when we talk about building resilience in students. So whereas a person with a fixed mindset would not want to take on any challenges, would avoid challenges because they think that, what if I fail? A person with a growth mindset will take on challenges because they see it as an opportunity to grow.
Absolutely.
A person with a fixed mindset, does not like to hear criticism, does not like to hear feedback. Whereas someone with a growth mindset will say that, I want feedback because then I'm going to better myself and I'll be able to improve. If you give up easily, if you're threatened with other people's success, you have more of a fixed mindset. Whereas if you don't compare yourself to others, you get inspired by others' success.
Correct.
You persevere. You don't give up easily. That is what leads to a growth mindset. So, as parents also, very often we praise children who have done well. And it has been proved by many studies that when you say that a child is clever, they tend to take less and less risks. But if you were to praise the child for the effort that they put in, even if they've not succeeded, but if you praise the effort, they know that they can do better, they will be able to improve, and it encourages them to keep trying harder and harder.
The fear of failure goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that, as parents, we definitely need to allow our children to be independent, not to let them be independent, help them if they do ask for it, but give them the space to grow, and then also hold them accountable for their actions. We sometimes, the new phase of parenting, this helicopter parenting, where parents are, constantly buzzing around their children, wanting to know everything that they're doing, and they don't let their children be at all. They want to micromanage everything. They don't allow children to grow, and then this is what is going to help children. This is going to impact the growth of resilience amongst children. The whole attitude of, okay, I have failed, now I'll dust myself off and I will try again.
True.
So, building their confidence by keeping them upbeat even when they have failed, telling them to work harder, telling them to, do better next time, but not berating them for their failures is very important, because then that builds the self-confidence in a child, because they believe that, okay, fine, maybe I didn't try enough, but I'll try harder next time and I will be able to do it. Whereas if we berate them and we say that, I knew you couldn't do it and you're stupid,
the
then
self-esteem
the self-esteem gets hampered, and the child will say, okay, fine, I'm stupid. What is the need for me to try? Because I'm not going to succeed. So there's no need for me to try. And that is definitely going to help children, really hinder them. And this is not only during their childhood, this will impact them right throughout their life. So that is something very important that we as parents need to keep in mind. And I think one of the most important things, because another term used for this generation is called the instant generation. You have instant coffee, instant noodles, instant gratification. When children want something, they want it absolutely now. And very often as parents, we believe that okay, fine, my child wants this. What is the harm if I can give it to the child? What's the harm in it? Let me just get it. But then it doesn't teach the child to be patient, and to instill the attitude or the habit of patience to wait for something is also very important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because as parents, I mean, obviously, all the parents want the best for their children. So we don't realize that our remarks are actually going in the wrong direction, because we've
Yeah.
never wanted anything bad for the children, and especially parents who have not had a very happy childhood, so to speak, or not the kind of gadgets and luxuries that are available today, and we can afford them. We weren't getting from our parents, either deliberately because our parents probably were more intelligent, not giving right away, or they
Yeah.
couldn't afford it for a different reason. But we think that ours was a different situation, we can afford it, why we should give it to them. But effectively that also goes as a disadvantage.
I'll just give you a small example of from my own childhood. At that time, the Walkmans had just come out, and there were a huge craze, and I was desperate for a Walkman. And so my father told me that you save up for a Walkman, and if you can save up half the amount, I will put in the rest, and I will buy you a Walkman.
True, true.
And it definitely taught me a lot of good habits that I still carry on in my life today,
True.
because you learn then not to be so frivolous. And, as I've said, this whole thing of not allowing children to give up easily.
Yeah.
You've not done something well or you failed, try and try again. If, um, again, I'll give you another example of something that happened very recently. We have a group of grade 11 students in PWS. And, we are a round square school, and they were very keen to have a round square service project. And they worked, I think they started working on this last year, and they made a presentation for a particular project that they wanted to do. And then when they did the costing of it, we found that it was just too expensive for us to do that. So then they went back to the drawing board and they came up with other projects. And they had then presented the whole project to our corporate director, and he also was, he gave them the go ahead to go through with it. And they were planning everything for October. And then comes the pandemic and everything gets locked down. And it's now very clear that there is no way that any parent would want to send their child to Pathways to take part in a service project. We didn't even know whether school would be open by that time.
True.
But that didn't faze these students at all. They came up with another project. And then just recently, early this month, they held a virtual conference of, how people have been affected and what they've learned from the pandemic. And they put their whole heart and soul into this and got some fantastic speakers from all over the world to come and speak to the whole group. And they had some 350 students who attended this virtual conference.
Great.
So, this is the attitude of perseverance that I'm talking about. You just don't give up till you finally get what you want. Yeah.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Ma'am, picking up from one of the audience question, Ankur had asked about setting up a school. So, I mean, India has been known for good education, not only recently, but from the old times. But how in the future you see the growth in the education industry, and especially with respect to the popularity of the international schools that have now sprung up in the last 5-7 years, especially, if not more. So how do you see that, and what kind of gaps exist for the expansion to come in?
Well, definitely the international curriculum has taken such a strong hold in our country. And I'm not talking about too many years, because in 2003, when Pathways first came up, Indus International School, Bangalore was one of the first schools also that came up. IB was not really known in the country. People were very skeptical about the IB curriculum. And not even 20 years hence, you have IB schools in virtually every corner of the country.
Right.
So
Right.
that definitely shows the need and the thirst for good education. And when I talk about good education, I'm not saying that that other schools are not giving good education, but that education is more knowledge driven. And the international curriculum gives children much more than just knowledge or academic
Right.
education. Most international schools focus a lot more on the other aspects. You're educating the whole child. It's not only about academics. You're looking at encouraging the child to become a global citizen. Look at what are the needs that the entire globe has. So things like community service is very important. Developing your spirituality through mindfulness and other meditation
Right.
are things that are important. So here, when you're educating the head, the heart, the body, it gives you more holistic education. And there have been so many parents who have told me that when parents come to for admission for their child to school, and I ask them that why pathways, or what brings you to pathways, and they will give me instances of either somebody from their family or a person who they know, their friend's child has come to pathways, and within a year they have seen how much that child has changed. They've become so much more confident. They are able to hold conversations with even adults on the most esoteric kind of topics.
Right.
um, so that is the kind of education, that is what real education is
Absolutely.
about.
That's
It's not only about academics,
absolutely. Absolutely.
and that is what every parent wants for their child.
Absolutely.
And I think that is why the international curriculum has gained so much uh, strength in India.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Ma'am, if I may ask on behalf of the career aspirants, the teaching fraternity, for example, or the support staff, are there any specialized certifications? Are there any specialized skills that Pathways looks for when people are taken on board?
When we are looking for teachers, yes, of course, they need to be an expert in their subject. But there are a lot of people who are experts in their subject. But we look for things like, you know, is the person adaptable to learning new methodologies, learning a new style of teaching? Because there are a number of people who are very experienced, but then they think they know it all, and this is the way they are, and this is the way they teach, and they are not going to change at all. So then for them to get a foothold in a school like Pathways will be difficult, because we want teachers who are willing to unlearn, relearn, because that's the whole cycle of gaining knowledge or education today. We cannot sit back just as teachers and say that I know everything and I don't need to know anything more, because as they say, knowledge gets outdated at every 48 hours. So we have to constantly keep learning, because there's just so much new things that keep coming up every year, that we have to keep upgrading ourselves. So somebody who is willing to take risks, learn new things, having a good connect with students is also very important, because while we don't want our teachers to be friends, but they have to be friendly, they have to be approachable, because that is what we value in our teachers.
Right, right, right. So there's a constant upgradation kind of a process that is in place. So there are programs, running programs for teacher fraternity to undergo and kind of keep on developing
Yes,
themselves. And
we lay a lot of stress on professional development for teachers, and not um, even in the time of this lockdown, where we know we have to be careful of our own budgets and our expenditure, school expenditure. This is one thing that the um corporate directors told us, that this is one area that we don't want you to reduce. If you
absolutely,
need to spend on professional development, you need to spend it. You don't. This is one area that we don't want you to cut down if
yeah.
it's necessary.
I think it's all the more important in tough times.
Absolutely.
It's all the more important to retain the right talent and to keep on developing the existing talent. It is so important. Ma'am, another thing that comes to my mind is what kind of opportunities or what kind of streams that the recent past students have taken up, so that it gives our audience a fair idea of on what kind of opportunities exist for students when they get out of pathways and what kind of colleges they can kind of aim at.
I think an easier question for me to answer would be, what are the careers that our students have not taken up? Because you know, um, in because in the MYP in grade 10, children do this personal project, which is one of the big defining moments of the middle years program. And there are so many students who have done something for their personal project, but then have got so involved in it that they have it has really become like a startup for them, and they become entrepreneurs and carried it on even till now.
Right, right,
One of the students took up managing e-waste as his personal project, and even now has his company going for collecting e-waste. One of the students took up something on reusing tires once they are, um, they're ready to be discarded, and
right.
doing wonderful creative things with those tires, and
Awesome.
that continues till today. So, and then in pathways, we believe that we want children to follow their passion, and when they have that opportunity, even during their school days, to follow their passion, then it sometimes automatically transfers that they continue to do that even once they leave school. So
Mm.
we've had children who are authors, who are in the hospitality industry, who are in the filmmaking industry. In fact, I think that we have around um, at least 10 to 12 authors who have uh, released books, and they're still students of our school. So as a student, they have written books and they have published them. In
Awesome.
just in the year that I have been in Pathways, um, 4 students have published books, and there are
Awesome.
so many more that have done so in the past. And they really, the world is their oyster, and
Wonderful.
because also they're living in a world where careers that we never dreamt of exist today.
Absolutely. And the opportunities are immense today.
Yeah. So, there's just so many things and that is, one of the main reasons why I think um, the skills that we teach our children are so important, because knowledge will get outdated. You might have to change, children in this generation, it is, studies have shown that they will be changing their job around 17 to 18 times before they reach the age of 40. In our generation, we changed maybe not more than 5 to 6 jobs. Our parents joined one job and they stayed in that job for the rest of their working life.
You're right. True, very true, ma'am. Wonderful. Ma'am, time just flew past and I didn't realize we've already crossed the hour. Thank you so much for coming over and giving such useful insights. Today was our 34th session that TLR now has conducted. Tomorrow there's another one, 35th session, and we've got music artist Gina Arthiva coming over and talking about conscious music code. So the audience, please do join tomorrow, 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. Indian Standard Time. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a great hour. Even I didn't realize how quickly the time flew by.
And thank you to the audience for those wonderful questions. Thank you so much.
Keep watching. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. All right.